Hi everyone. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Melissa Mims, born in Houston, Texas, was the child of Michael and Maren. She had 3 siblings, a brother named Michael Jr., and 2 sisters named Maria and Michelle Dew. To the sisters' close bond, their parents raised them as triplets growing up. Melissa was known for her adventurous spirit and willingness to try new things. She had a zest for life that often got her into trouble, but also made her the life of the party. When Melissa reached adulthood, she made the decision to leave Texas and relocate to Jacksonville, North Carolina. One day, she met a man who would later become her husband. She then became Melissa Platt in October 1995. Melissa gave birth to her first daughter, Brianna, several years later. In July 2003, she welcomed her second child, Chassid. Unfortunately, Melissa's marriage didn't work out, and it ended in divorce in 2005. The divorce left Melissa facing numerous challenges. She found herself struggling to adapt to her new reality. In 2004, Melissa encountered legal trouble when she was arrested for writing bad checks. The charge landed her in hot water, and a year later in 2005, she was found guilty and sentenced to probation. Melissa's difficulties in life led her to turn to alcohol as a means of coping. However, this decision exacerbated her problems, rather than providing solace as a result. It was decided that her daughters would be better off living with a relative, as Melissa was not in a suitable state of mind to care for them. In 2006, while working at an auto parts store in Jacksonville, North Carolina, Melissa encountered a customer named Joey Tindall. Although Joey was a few years older than Melissa, they hit it off instantly. Joey, who worked as a truck driver, captured Melissa's attention, and it wasn't long before they began dating like Melissa. Joey shared a love for alcohol, and their shared home drinking became an integral part of their lives. Every aspect of their relationship revolved around drinking, and they spent most of their time in indulging in alcoholic beverages. Their home in Pink Hill served as a hub for their drinking escapades, with Melissa and Joey spending most of their time there. Joey frequently consumed alcohol while also taking Paxil, an antidepressant. Melissa confided in her family that when he combined alcohol and drugs, Joey would become violent. His 2 sons from a previous relationship echoed Melissa's statements during their interviews with authorities. Drinking alcohol did not alleviate Melissa's mental health issues and personal struggles. Eventually, she realized that alcohol was controlling her life and reached out to her family in Texas. For help, Melissa told them that she was scared and concerned about the path she was on, and admitted that she was not in control of her drinking. She revealed that her boyfriend Joey constantly pressured her to drink due to everything happening in her life. Melissa made the decision to check herself into the Enau County Behavioral Health Clinic in Jacksonville, North Carolina, with the hope of overcoming her alcohol addiction. However, she checked herself out of the clinic only a few days later. Joey had been harassing Melissa with threatening messages, telling her that if she persisted in seeking help for herself and went to rehab, he would break up with her. This incident wasn't the first time Joey manipulated Melissa. There were several previous instances when he kicked her out of the house, forcing her to sleep outside in her car because she had nowhere else to go. Melissa's family desperately pleaded with her to return to Texas, where they lived, and end her relationship with Joey. However, Joey's manipulative behavior made Melissa feel like she had nowhere else to go and feeling like she had no other choice. She remained with him on Wednesday, October 8th. Melissa's mother, Maren, called Melissa's probation officer because she was concerned about Melissa. Regardless of the circumstances, Melissa maintained constant contact with her mother and her sisters, Maren and Maria. However, it had been days since Maren, Maria, and Michelle had seen or heard from Melissa, which was unusual. They began calling Melissa multiple times throughout the day, but there was no answer. When Joey occasionally answered, he would provide excuses for why Melissa was unable to come to the phone. Terrified for her well-being, Maren and Melissa's sister Ears made 4 to 5 calls each night, only to be met with another excuse from Joey. Slowly but surely, Joey turned Melissa's phone off and disconnected her voicemail, leaving her family even more suspicious. Melissa's family was deeply concerned about Joey's behavior and suspected foul play after Maren contacted Melissa's probation officer. He decided to drive to Joey and Melissa's home in Pink Hill, North Carolina, to ensure that Melissa was safe and out of trouble, arriving at the house around 5:17 p.m. The probation officer knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Knowing that Melissa was unemployed, the probation officer realized that there was nowhere for her to be, so he continued his knocking. However, Melissa never responded to the door. Eventually, the probation officer's concern grew as he had observed Melissa 1 week earlier and smelled alcohol on her, indicating that she was drinking again. He worried that she might be inside the house, passed out and in need of help. However, as a probation officer, he lacked the authority to enter the residence. Instead, he decided to call the Lenoir County Sheriff Officer for assistance. Several minutes after the probation officer's initial call for help, 2 officers from the sheriff's department arrived. At the scene, however, they informed the probation officer that they were unable to break into someone's home without probable cause. They explained that contact the homeowner, Joey Tindall, was necessary to obtain entry into the house. One of the officers managed to get hold of Joey, who informed them that he was currently not at home but at work. However, he mentioned that his girlfriend Melissa should be present in the house during the phone conversation with the officer. Joey stated that Melissa might be resting inside as she was unwell. Joey explained that Melissa's drinking had become increasingly out of control, and he mentioned that it was possible she may have passed out. He emphasized to the officer that he did not always have the ability to provide the best care for Melissa. Still, Joey said he had reached out to Melissa's mother on multiple occasions, seeking assistance in getting her back into rehabilitation. After Joey granted the police permission to enter the house, Melissa's probation officer and 2 Lenoir County Sheriff's officers proceeded to the back of the property and entered through the back door. Once inside, the officers made their way through the house until they found what seemed to be a bedroom. Upon entering the room, the officers discovered Melissa lying motionless on her bed, covered by a blanket. The officers initially attempted to make contact with Melissa by asking her if she needed help, but their efforts were met with no response. Upon closer examination, the officers noticed that Melissa was trying to move her body and nod her head, indicating that she was still alive. However, her condition did not appear to be stable. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the officers promptly called for an ambulance to be sent to Melissa in Joey's home. As the officers waited for the ambulance to arrive, they carefully examined the bedroom they were in. One particular detail caught their attention. The bed that Melissa was lying on had no sheets, and she was wrapped in a blanket that covered only the top half of her body. The officers noticed that Melissa was nuded from the waist down with only a shirt on. However, it was evident that the shirt was merely draped over her, exposing her head and one arm. The officers observed Melissa shaking uncontrollably in an effort to provide some modesty and cover her to keep warm. The officers attempted to shield Melissa while they waited for their medical backup to arrive. During this time, they noticed multiple bruises on her body scattered in different stages of healing. While some bruises appeared fresh, others appeared older, indicating various instances of abuse. One of the items the officers noticed in Melissa's room was a table with 2 cups containing straws. Upon closer inspection, the officers discovered that the cups were filled with alcohol. This discovery shocked the officers, as they had anticipated finding water or juice in Melissa's condition. The smell of alcohol in the cups raised suspicions and prompted further investigation. With their suspicions raised due to the presence of bruises on Melissa's body, the officers decided to approach her to inquire about any potential abuse. Despite her immense pain, Melissa shook her head no. In response to their question, however, in whispers and broken words, she tried to explain to the officers that the bruises were a result of a fall she had experienced while attempting to answer her phone. Throughout her explanation, Melissa kept her eyes closed, as if merely lifting her eyelids was causing her too much pain. The ambulance eventually arrived at Melissa and Joey's house and entered through the back door. As they walked into the home, they were immediately struck by the pungent smell. This odor was so strong that it was nearly impossible to ignore. According to the initial reports filed by the EMTs, the smell in the house was a combination of cigarettes and body fluid. It bore a strong resemblance to the scent of someone sitting in their urine and feces for an extended period. The paramedics approached the bed where Melissa lay and asked her questions. However, Melissa remained unresponsive, making only minimal movements when someone spoke loudly and closely to her ear. There were instances where Melissa struggled to open her eyes due to the intense pain she was experiencing. One of the paramedics noticed that the mattress she was lying on was soiled with urine, feces, and blood. Additionally, he saw that Melissa had a dark eye along with other concerning bruises on her neck, a swollen jaw, and blood in her eye. As the medic proceeded with his examination, he observed that Melissa had several broken toes in various stages of healing. He further noticed bruising and blood in her private area. But there was no indication of sexual abuse as paramedics and officers were examining Melissa at Joey Tindall's home. Joey arrived home from work. One of the officers approached Joey and inquired as to how Melissa ended up in the condition she was in. Joey replied that Melissa had a tendency to be clumsy and often found herself in accidents. The officer informed Joey that Melissa's condition was serious and required immediate medical attention despite his position as Melissa's boyfriend and the sole person in the state who cared for her. Joey declined to accompany her to the hospital. Instead, he insisted on staying home and periodically checking in for updates upon her arrival at the hospital. Melissa underwent a thorough examination which revealed that she was suffering from a closed head injury. Recognizing the seriousness of her condition, the hospital where she initially saw treatment determined that they were unable to provide the specialized care she needed. As a result, she was airlifted to a different medical facility, the Pitt Memorial Hospital in Greenville, North Carolina. At Pitt Memorial Hospital, the doctors determined that Melissa's injuries were of such a severe nature that the services of the police were required. It was decided that the police officers who found her at the scene should visit the hospital and take pictures of her injuries. The officers arrived at the hospital and took their designated pictures of Melissa's injuries. Once the officers had completed their task, Melissa's case was handed over to two separate detectives. While at Pitt Memorial Hospital, a doctor conducted a CT scan on Melissa, revealing that she had suffered an intracranial hemorrhage due to physical trauma. The CT scan also showed that Melissa's jaw was broken into two parts. Due to the extent of Melissa's brain injury, she needed immediate surgical intervention. She underwent an emergency surgery known as a frontal craniotomy. During this surgical procedure, the surgeon discovered a second bleed in Melissa's brain. This doctor determined that this second brain bleed occurred at a different time than the first injury during the surgery. The doctor also uncovered evidence that Melissa had been shot in the past. Melissa had told everyone that she had accidentally shot herself. However, Melissa's loved ones suspect Joe's involvement in this incident. They believe that Joey might have had something to do with her shooting. The two detectives assigned to Melissa's case visited Joey Tindall at his house to interview him about Melissa and her injuries. During the interview, the detective asked Joey to show them the area of the house where Melissa had fallen and injured herself, and they asked for specific details about those incidents. However, Joey struggled to tell the detectives the times and dates when Melissa fell. Joey was general in his answers and never gave any specifics. However, Joey did remember details about Melissa's drinking struggles. He said there was one night when he woke up and Melissa wasn't in bed. Worried, Joey said he went to look for her outside the house and found Melissa naked, sleeping in the back of her car. According to Joey, Melissa had injuries on her body from running around outside and falling. The detectives also took the opportunity to consult Melissa's probation officer. He confirmed that he had seen Melissa 1 week before her hospitalization, but at that time he did not notice any bruises or injuries on her. On November 17th, Melissa underwent a second surgery, during which it was determined she had necrosis, a brain failure. Following the surgery, Melissa was conscious for a brief period but remained out of it by early November. Melissa developed pneumonia, and by the end of the month she required a third surgery due to spinal fluid in her brain. Melissa then began experiencing daily seizures, which escalated to seizures, occurring every few minutes. On December 17th, it became evident that Melissa's condition was not improving. Following a difficult conversation, Melissa's loved ones made the heart-wrenching decision to remove her from the life support system. After spending 9 weeks in the hospital, Melissa passed away at 7:58 p.m. surrounded by her family. Just prior to her passing, the detectives paid a visit to Melissa. However, they visited her after one of her surgeries, and unfortunately her responses made little sense. Melissa told the detectives that she had sustained her injuries in a car accident, though she also admitted being a bit clumsy. The medical examiner ruled that a brain injury caused Melissa's death, but they were not able to determine the manner of death. Melissa's family and friends have been fighting for over 10 years to have her death classified as a homicide, seeking justice for their loved one. One day after Melissa's passing, her mother received an anonymous phone call. The person on the other end of the line informed her about Joey Tindall's history of domestic violence and asserted that he had assaulted and abused women on multiple occasions. Furthermore, other women who had encounters with Joey encouraged Melissa's family to persist in pressing charges, as they were convinced that Joey was a bad person who needed to be apprehended. Upon learning this information, Melissa's family decided to investigate Joey's background. Melissa's family was informed that Joey Tindall's 2 previous marriages ended in divorce in 2001. His first marriage came to an end after an incident where he allegedly pointed a gun, and his ex-wife, their 2 sons who witnessed the incident, corroborated their mother's story as a result of this attack. His ex-wife sought a restraining order, but it was dismissed by the court 6 months later. Joey's second marriage, which lasted a mere 7 months, came to an end when Joey's ex-spouse obtained a restraining order against Joey due to allegations of domestic violence. The judge presiding over the case ruled that Joey must stay away from his ex-wife for only 1 week. Melissa's family has learned that one of Joey's sons divulged during their youth that a female friend once stayed at their house. It was alleged that she woke up to Joey with his hands down her pants, prompting her to scream in fright. The police were unable to find a sufficient evidence to charge Joey Tindall with a crime in relation to Melissa's death. They determined that Joey was genuinely trying to take care of Melissa. In fact, in the days prior to her death, he brought her home a meatloaf dinner and fed it to her. Joey claimed he did his best to assist her, and the authorities believed his story. A change in Melissa's case occurred on June 28, 2021, when another death certificate was issued, citing homicide as the manner of death. As a result, the Lenoir County Sheriff's Office reopened Melissa's investigation. Melissa's family, who had hired a private detective and funded their efforts through merchandise sales and GoFundMe campaigns, reached out to a doctor who suspected Melissa's injuries were a result of chronic physical abuse. The family attributes the reopening of the case to the information uncovered by the private investigator for Melissa's family. The change in death certificate was seen as a major victory in their quest for justice. Melissa's sister Michelle revealed that the news brought her to tears. She expressed that she never expected to receive any news about her sister's death. Considering the circumstances of the case, Michelle stated that her family unanimously agreed that justice could only be achieved if the culprit responsible for Melissa's death was found guilty.